Welcome to Woman with Bunny Ears, a Twin Peaks podcast, Season 3, Episode 2, also known as We Want Headbands, a 4-syllable and 1-character podcast in Baseline. Today we will be resuming discussion of Project Lawful, aka Planecrash, and doing a game show portion over the entirety of the story up through Book 7. I am your host, the contestant Flashy Man, and joining me is your co-host, the Game Master, Cakoluchiam.
Yes, game show. All right. So I'm thinking maybe we alternate by books, or do you want to just grill me, you being somebody who has read more than I, or I grill you, somebody for whom the earlier chapters are less recent? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it would make more sense if you grilled me, because I've never actually seen your chapter titles.
Oh, that's right. That's right. All right.
But I don't want to have all the fun. So if it seems like it would be fun for you to do it, then I could grill you, or you could just say what you remember after I say what I remember, and we can converse about it.
Yeah, I think. All right. So let's see. Let's just see what you remember, and I'll correct you or give my uneducated perspective in response. And
Okay.
neither of us will know if we're correct because neither of us have read these recently. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be reading these concurrently while we record. So
No.
this may entirely be a fiction made up by ourselves.
Yeah, we're just gonna start making up our own story. Gonna be a whole new plane crash in here.
All
Oh,
right.
I didn't explain. The joke is that he was in a plane crash, but he's also in a different plane now. The two planes are crashing together.
Oh my freaking god! How did I not get that?
Yeah,
You
well,
are absolutely correct.
you just needed to read another 100,000 words, and you would have gone, "Oh, it's
Oh my god!
planes! Like a
It is
plane!"
plain. All right. Yeah, I don't know if. Okay, well we can play our game. So, Volume 1, Mad Investor
Yes.
Chaos and the Woman of Asmodeus.
Yes. Also, I've never actually, since I didn't read the chapters this way, I have no idea where they start and end. So I guess I'm just gonna guess where they probably ended.
That sounds about a good idea. Let's see.
All right.
Or maybe like look to the next chapter title and guess where the ending is based on those two.
Ooh.
If you let me. So there is a compiled table of contents with the entire thing at imisia.com. Will redirect, and if you change the folder and title to just planecrash.htm, it will get you there, and I will send you the link.
Okay.
And this is sort of like a little bit my master file, and you can uncensor those titles and open the contents as you will.
Oh, you didn't want to just read out the titles to me as you quiz
Oh,
me?
right. I can read out the titles. That actually, I was considering that right now, but I had assumed you were already there. So yeah, if you're
No,
not already there, don't go
I never
there,
learned how to read.
and I will read out the titles. All right. So
Sounds good.
again, let's start with Volume 1, Mad Investor Chaos and the Woman of Asmodeus. What do you think that represents?
Wait, so this is volume 1? That's just the thread 1, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. I'm on a roll.
All right, and again, I have not read the entire thread. You have.
Yeah.
So maybe while we're doing this, you can also give me feedback as to whether this is fair based on your understanding of the entire context. But my impression is that the title of the thread is representative of the thread. And so
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is about those two characters.
All right. So,
mostly.
So, first chapter is the prologue, which I have titled Planecrash.
Yes.
What happens?
I happen to know this one because I looked at the chapter listing earlier just to sort of get a sense of what the chapters were. So I know this is just the single posts where it explains that Keltham is from Dathilon that has screened off their history, and he gets on a plane and then he dies.
He gets on a plane and he dies. Yeah, just a moment. Game show. Making a note. Okay. Now on the book header, we have places people go when they are dead. That's book one.
Classy.
So what happens in this book in
Oh,
general?
are we? Oh, okay. Well, Keltham's gonna show up and have a long series of conversations with Carissa, and then maybe he'll get to the villa of the Duke by the end of it.
I think you are exactly right there. I believe that is the last line of the chapter is "and they teleport." So yes,
Nice.
this is where he discovers that he is dead, in fact, and he has gone here, and that going places when you are dead is not unheard of in the place where he has arrived. It is unheard of where he's from, and thus far, even though it is common in Galarian, people arriving on the material plane, as it were, is not common, in fact. And so Keltham is weird. Right. So, chapter 1, Galarian.
Yeah. So I'm gonna guess, he materializes, he's very cold, he runs like towards the bubble into a house-like structure. He meets Carissa, she does the translation spell, and then they just talk for a while about like the world.
Right.
And
so this is basically
yeah.
where he learns that he is on a different world. Right. And then chapter 2, Equilibrium.
Now it's starting to get tough because what portions of the conversation would you cut at?
Portions of the conversation would I cut out? So why does Equilibrium relate to his first conversation with Carissa?
Yeah, that's tough. He's always bringing up equilibrium. I don't see what equilibrium would cause that, and so forth. And so I can't really tell, so I'm just gonna do a guess that I know will eventually be true. This chapter is the one where Carissa goes off and talks to her superiors.
I believe that has not happened yet. So I should say these chapters are fairly short. They're basically meant to be a single scene, more or less. If there are multiple topics of conversation in the theme that are rather distinct, I try to separate them into different chapters. So this basically, my impression of why I titled this Equilibrium, and also I should say my impression because I do not remember exactly, so I'm also recalling, is that this is where Keltham learns that on Galarian, good and evil, lawful and chaos are, in fact, like practical, objective measures of people and things that have consequences and determine where your afterlife is. And so the equilibrium is that, there is a neutral, and on one side there is good, on one side there is evil, on one side there is law, and on one side there is chaos. And for whatever reason, that equilibrium has been maintained. And there are some weird things about it that Keltham has discovered, one of which is chapter 3, Steel.
Man, he's also always thinking about steel. Maybe he's asking about, what if I were to make a lot of steel? Do you guys have six-sided snowflakes here? That means I can probably make steel.
Right, the six-sided snowflakes is an interesting thing. Let me see. I actually do want to check. I believe that does in fact come up, I think, in this chapter.
Nice.
Chapter 3, Steel. Yes.
That's like bonus points for me.
When it's literally the first tag, because the last tag of chapter 2 is, do you know what water is made of that's not 2 1-proton atoms and 1 8-proton atom? Because Keltham's trying to check whether physics is the same. And so chapter 3 is Carissa saying, well, when water freezes in the sky, it forms snowflakes. And that, of course, is six-sided, so there's some type of symmetry there, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and Keltham is trying to figure out, okay, what things do I know of that you don't know of that I can apply? And I'm not sure, but I believe the answer to that is that they do have steel here, but it's kind of hard to make and not as useful as Keltham would hope because
Right.
they happen to have like magical metals that are better than steel. And so you don't really need steel as much. But magic is still kind of inaccessible to the layman, so being able to mass produce steel might be a good thing. All right, chapter 4. After they chat about steel, we have infinite possibility space.
Well, I might be jumping the gun, but perhaps this is where Keltham considers constructing the Kelthamverse.
Not quite.
Okay.
So infinite possibility space. Let's see if I can. I'm actually going to skim this so I can check because I don't remember what infinite possibility space. And I do like the. I do think I should correct you to some degree also to.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe it's where
because
he's thinking about like the metaphysics of ending up in an afterlife.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that is discussed here is that there are afterlives and there are let's see, there are a bunch of things that should happen. Counterfactuals is a word talked about here. And I think they're basically just talking about the gods and how they relate to the mortal realm, or the mortal plane, whatever they call it. Uh, and there are a lot of gods, and those gods often relate to the different alignments. At the end of this chapter, we broke the podcast one tag before what I would end the chapter at, and that is at chapter 4.5, oaths, oaths.
What's so special about oaths? Oh, I have to guess that, don't I?
Yes.
I guess. I mean, maybe Carissa explains that you can swear an oath to have your soul destroyed if you really want to.
I believe I don't. Let's see. I don't think so. So I think the relevant passage here in chapter 4.5, which is one tag, is Keltham is thinking while Carissa runs off to find the priest. Carissa has just promised him something, and she has sworn on a god, I believe, and that is a thing that Keltham makes no sense to him. The idea of invoking really anything, but in particular somebody else as a mark of trustworthiness. That's a thing that doesn't make sense to him because in Dathalon, people make contracts and they're honest about what they want in the contract, and there's not really deception is looked down upon, let's say, and also deception doesn't reliably get you what you want in the long run, and so even having to swear an oath about something, I think, is foreign to him. But yes, also he considers that she swore in her capacity as a god's employee for her oath to mean something. He now thinks, okay, well, what are gods? Or what are the gods? I need to meet these people. Let's remember their names. So that brings us to chapter 5, Surface Thoughts. Why is this titled Surface Thoughts?
To imagine, it's titled Surface Thoughts because Keltham is really good at thinking, and he has a lot of surface thoughts and non-surface thoughts. And then he thinks really hard about what kind of god he'd like to have. That's my guess.
No, you're way jumping the gun here, and I
God
feel like
damn it.
maybe we need to do like shorter summaries because
Yeah.
you are thinking there's a lot more to this than there is. Really, surface thoughts is just where we learn as readers that mind reading is a thing, and
Okay.
Carissa can mind read, and
Mm.
so she goes over and tries to see like what he's thinking about. Oh, actually, wait a second. Maybe this is where he thinks about gods, but I don't think it's the intense like interrogation about who his god is. I think he's still considering what gods there are, and among them, uh, who
Right.
resonates with him.
Right.
Um, so he makes the plan to find his own god. Uh,
Okay.
and let's see. Uh, interlude 1. So, yeah, I don't remember. Maybe this is him finding the god. I don't remember if there's a deeper one next, but interlude 1, environmentalized intrinsics. So
So
I've
this
already
would be,
mentioned that this is
yeah,
a tag by Dathalon.
yeah. This is the bingo free space because we considered, this is the Dathalon fiction habit of imagining a universe based on your own characteristics, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera.
Which is apparently a common enough thing on Dathalon that oh no, it's not. It is not a common enough thing on Dathalon because the baseline phrase for this trope is a polysyllabic monstrosity that would literally translate as intrinsic characteristic boundary edge. But polysyllabic monstrosities are things that Dathalon tries to avoid as much as possible. So this apparently is a very complicated thing that Keltham's trying to do.
I got the
Um,
feeling that this was also like a glowfic thing that was being translated into,
ah,
the. But I'm
translated
not certain about
baseline
that. It just has a,
into English for the benefit of the reader.
yeah.
So we're getting a bit of a babblefish description here. That would
Mhm.
explain how much sense it makes to me right now. Right, chapter 6, the true meaning of chaos.
Mm, I guess he's still reflecting on what it means to be a Keltham. That's my guess.
So this actually is where he starts thinking, or not starts, this is where he thinks deeply about who his god should be. And he thinks that his ideal god would be chaos, and specifically chaotic evil. And this is actually only 2 tags because Keltham thinking is one very long tag. So
Right.
it kind of deserves its own chapter. But I put in the follow up a 2-line response by Abadar, who says there is not a chaotic evil god like that, because Keltham was somewhat misinformed about chaos and also about evil. There is, as it
Yeah.
happens, a god like that. So Abadar is not the chaotic evil god of making deals or whatever it is Keltham said. Uh, and here we also learn that uh, the woman of Asmodeus, Carissa, is not being entirely honest with Keltham. She exists in a uh, evil society, and lying is a thing that they kind of need to do in order to keep people from going crazy and trying to destroy everything. So, chapter 7, that brings us to Squirrel.
Yeah. This is, Abadar noticing Keltham going, I'd like this guy to be my cleric. Let me make a deal with Asmodeus.
Exactly. So, yeah, Abadar makes a deal with Asmodeus so that Asmodeus will leave Keltham alone a little bit, and Abadar can figure out what's going on and maybe adopt this squirrel for himself. Which brings us to chapter 8, Presumption of Good Intentions.
I assume the title is a reference to Keltham saying something about how we are presuming good intentions, and uh, informally I am giving you a favor. And
Right.
yeah, possibly that's about when they're talking to him about going to Ostenso.
Right. You are exactly right. This is where Keltham, having discovered that like swearing an oath is a thing that people need to do, that you can't, on this planet usually uh, assume people are telling the truth, is just letting his not yet friend over here, Carissa, know that, I'm going to presume that you have good intentions with helping me out, and vice versa. So let's try to figure stuff out. Let's make a deal to make this place better, and figure out what's good for both of them. And they teleport. So that is the end of book 1. Lovely. Out of 8.
Nice.
So we have just finished book 1, and they have teleported now. And we come to book 2, Customs. Why is this titled Customs, Flashy Man?
Well, I don't know. They're gonna be in the library. That's my guess about what happens in this book.
In this book, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, and why do you suppose I decided to title it Customs?
Beats me. I mean, he
Let's have you
certainly
interrogate
learns.
my mind, since you know me so well by now.
He certainly learns about a lot of customs of this new land. That kind of always happens, but it
Yeah.
happens here too.
All right. So I'm gonna spoil you on it because this one's also a double entendre. Because,
Ah,
as you say, he's learning a lot about the customs of Galarian, and likewise, they are vetting him to make sure that he is not, here to destroy the world or
I
to
guess
take down Cheliax or whatever. So this is
so.
sort of like putting him through customs at airport security type thing. So we've got a double meaning there. He's learning
Nice.
customs and he's going through customs. So chapter 9 is syllables.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that could be related to speaking the language.
And
Possibly they're just
that is spot on. Now,
nice.
can you guess what of the language I'm referring to by the title syllables?
Well, there are several comments in the story so far where he goes, "Oh my God, that takes so many syllables to say," and I assume this one is "thank you."
I believe thank you shows up later, possibly when he's talking with the devil. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but the ones in particular here are where the line is, he says, "Oh my ass. Prior probability distribution is how many syllables?" Uh,
Mhm.
and we learn that baseline is very optimized. And the other one, which I think you would appreciate given your name here, is root of average of squares of deviations from average. And he learns
Yeah.
that that means a +2 on your ability score, which we discussed earlier,
Mhm.
is how you determine on the distribution of random generation how excellent you are. And +2 is a lot. And we learn that he is a 18 intelligence, and that is 4 root of average of squares of deviations from average above. So he is unreasonably intelligent, and he is average for Dathalon, which is scary, I think, but makes sense with Eliezer's conception of Dathalon as somewhere that people are actually trying. So he now finds out that what is average where he came from is stupidly intelligent where he is now, and that he needs to raise the sanity waterline if he's going to be able to do anything in this world. And this one ends up with okay, this is also another split chapter, and chapter 9.5 is lost in translation. Let's see if that's
Going to guess. I missed this one, but they pop off to see that film, Lost in Translation.
that is I'm not sure that one exists on Galarian, and I don't think they can get back to Dathalon, let alone Earth. So I'm going to say no. However, there is a remote possibility that that is the case because they do have magic here.
True.
And if we've learned anything from any fan fiction, magic can do anything.
Yeah.
That's like what its name means. Is it breaks the laws of physics, and once 0 equals 1, we'll come to that later. So lost in translation. I'm having trouble finding what this is, but again, it was a split chapter, so this is basically a continuation of them talking about language. And particularly language. Keltham is currently under the influence, I believe, of is he in comprehend languages? And they are. I think
They
he's
have.
finally been given share language at this point.
Mm.
And he is let know that he will be given share language had it cast on him once a day in order to understand them. So chapter 10, we have spilled ink.
Spilled ink. Well, maybe he goes to the library.
Let's just figure that out. Oh, look. If he asks the staff, they will show him down a flight of stairs and through a courtyard to a very modest library, really. 2 rooms with high ceilings and shelves full of books. Also, it's full of teenage girls sitting 3 to an overstuffed armchair and giggling. So, spilled ink. Why did I name it that?
Well, presumably because the books are a waste of ink.
That sounds about right. And I forget whether this is where he starts reading the books. Yes, it is. You are correct. He opens to some random pages and wonders why the hell are people writing these books? These books are worthless. And he also learns that in order to cast magic, at least wizards need a spell book with special inks. So that is the thing. And then it ends with, hang on a moment. Oh, yes, this is lovely. Okay, so he turns around from looking at all these books and checking the library to see like, okay, is this a library like I know of? Does it have a secret passageway? Because every library has a secret passageway, and of course he doesn't find one because it's secret if it does exist. The last line is emergency internal Keltham meeting right now, which he says because of chapter 11 common knowledge.
Yes, well, he's seen all the attractive girls and has now concluded that the government wants his valuable genes and thinks very hard about what he thinks his own market value is for that and what he should do.
Yes, indeed. This is where he realizes that they are trying to seduce him into being very nice. Did the local government assign him a research harem? And he's trying to figure out what magic is. He learns that magic is a thing. Well, he learned that a while ago, but he learns that spells are written down in wizard spell books, and most people know about spells, what they are, what they do, because it's just part of the universe. And so he wants to learn about wizard spells so that he can have the common knowledge that is going to help him understand what people need here. So chapter 12, sources.
Sources. I don't know. Is he thinking about the different sources of genes in the 2 universes?
Yes, that is one of the things.
Okay.
I believe. I may be lying to you.
They also discuss
A little
the
bit,
book.
yeah. Genes. They discuss what is that?
They also discuss the books, the sources, if you will, that they have to work with.
Yes, the books and the sources of magic, and in fact, this is also where we are introduced to another god. This god being Nethys. And why does Nethys come into this story?
Why does Nethys come into this story? I mean, unless the rest of the gods are having a powwow, I don't remember Nethys showing up.
So we already know that Abadar is taking a look at this, but Nethys sees Keltham studying magic and is like, Keltham is thinking, oh, magic can do so many things. Magic could, for example, create a nuclear bomb very easily. And Nethys shows up, says, is that squirrel thinking about how to do science to magic in order to create huge explosions?
Nice.
Nethys is very excited about science because Nethys is the god of, I believe, god, just straight up god of science. Is that right?
Knowledge, I think.
Yeah, knowledge, which
And
arguably
explosions.
Nethys is the god who holds magic above all things. Okay, so I'm
That too.
exactly wrong. It's the god of magic, but yes, you are correct. It's the god of knowledge of magic. And so Nethys likes people learning about things, and particularly does not care whether those things are good or bad. Nethys is a neutral god. So that is the sources of magic and the sources at the library, and at which point Keltham decides it's time to take a nap. And we come to
Nice.
chapter 13, entitled 7.
7? 7? Are there 7 gods having a conference about what to do about Keltham?
I don't believe so. No, there are not.
Oh, okay.
7 is, however, an important number, and it has to do with the god whom we are just introduced to.
Ah,
And we'll,
yes. So Abadar is clericking Keltham, and Nethys says, I will pay you the difference if instead of giving him 4 cleric levels, you give him 7 cleric levels, or something like that.
yeah, it's 3 cleric levels is what Abadar wants to give him. But yes,
Mhm.
Keltham is getting a fuck ton of magic
Mhm.
very quickly. And this is already a hard thing for people in Galarian who know about magic and what it does. And Keltham has basically no idea what, like he's trying to figure it out. So this chapter leads with him trying to think more like a keeper, and trying to figure out how to talk to the god of coordination, who he thinks his god is, which actually isn't far from Abadar, who is the god of, not the god of contracts, but he is a lawful god. The god of contracts is, I believe, Asmodeus. But Abadar is particularly very lawful, loves coordination, loves agreements. And Abadar decides, let's make Keltham my cleric.
Nice.
And
We'd
this is
better
like, yeah.
we'd better speed up this game show segment.
Yeah,
We're only on
we're only on
14.
14 out of 64.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking we should cut this into 2 episodes. I was already thinking we should have the intro and the game show in separate episodes. I thought we could do it in one because I did not realize how much intro we were going to get into. But I did make a note where we started doing the game show, so it should be easy enough to cut up. That's at 1 hour and 24 minutes of intro.
All right.
So we can try to go faster, but I think we should not worry too hard. This is not going to become a well, I shouldn't jinx it, but I don't think it's going to become a 3.5 hour episode.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I just think we should go faster.
Okay, sorry. All right, chapter 14 is heresy.
This would be Carissa worrying about getting screened for heresy and whatnot.
This is absolutely Carissa worrying about getting screened for heresy, and particularly, this is also about Carissa getting screened for heresy. Uh, so she wakes up, and Cleric comes in and tries to get her to say the magic words that will allow him to torture her forever. And she does not. She's actually very good at being a lawful woman of Asmodeus. She is incredibly loyal. And I think we get the impression that she's not even lying, that she actually does want to get Asmodeus to benefit Asmodeus. Like this is the part I think where we see that Carissa believes there are legitimate lowercase g good reasons to support Asmodeus, and that she wants to do all in her power to do so. And she definitely massages her phrasing, but I don't think it's with the intent to deceive. I think it's with the intent to avoid people getting the signal that they should torture her, which, dumb people will take signals that don't mean something if it gives them a reason to do something they want to do.
Sure.
All right, which brings us to interlude 2. They never
Whoa.
listen.
This would be well, it's obviously Ptolemons, and I think this is where a bunch of the gods stand around having a powwow and decide to take the privileged null action.
That is very close. I believe that is the next chapter, and I will give you the point for this one. There are no points, but I'm giving one anyway, because I actually only set this interlude as the single tag where we are introduced to Ptolemons in a parenthetical, where Ptolemons has now given up on persuading Asmodeus and Abadar to squish the mortal or erase its memories, because Ptolemons recognizes that Keltham is capable of building atomic bombs with magic and destroying the frickin' world. And Ptolemons is literally the god of not destroying the world. So she is not a fan of him.
Right.
Then we have chapter 15, Board of Coordination.
Right. As I said.
Well, there's more to it than this. So after we are introduced to Ptolemons, we return to Keltham's perspective before we talk to the gods. And what is Keltham doing that relates to a board of coordination?
I mean, he's asking his god to talk to him directly. And his god said, "Why, yes, I will." And then people say, gods say, "No, you won't."
Right. So that is the conversation that happens afterward, but I pulled the title because he literally calls his bed headboard the bed headboard of coordination, because he does not know what an altar is.
Right.
Because he, like, praying isn't a thing that's done in Dathalon, but apparently he needs to do that in order to talk to a deity, and he needs to pray at an altar, and he doesn't know what an altar is, so he's going to pray at his bed headboard of coordination. And Abadar is like, "I'll talk to you," and Ptolemons is like, "Hell nah." Or I should say, afterlife, outer planes nah. I'm not sure if hell is invoked the same way here. And interestingly, Asmodeus agrees that that Abadar should not have given Keltham 7 cleric levels, and Nethys is not apologetic at all. And Keltham, after praying at the bed headboard of coordination, discovers he has some more spells. And chapter 16, Topology, is...
They would be talking about the topology of spells.
Right. And in fact, we kind of learn that topology itself is fundamentally spellcasting. Spellcasting is fundamentally made of topology. And so Keltham Keltham thinks that, the reason spells are usually restricted to people with intelligence of 16 and above is because you need that level of intelligence to understand topology. And that if the world just understood topology, everybody could be a spellcaster. But that's not explicitly discussed here. But it is, Keltham does say something like that at some point. And here it is where we learn that spells are just topological manifolds of some sort that are in
Well,
shapes.
aren't we all?
that can be easily snapped into equilibria configuration. Basically, that a spell is an object in imaginary spell space that has multiple equilibria, and you pull it into an unstable equilibria, and then in order to cast the spell, you flick it out of the unstable equilibrium and let it fall back to the stable equilibrium, and in the process of doing that, it releases energy and does weird things.
Nice.
And we have Chapter 17, Master Criminal Detective. Yes.
Let's see. I remember there is a lot of discussion in this book about like secret evil master criminals being like a Dathalani trope. That they're
Yeah.
like, you shouldn't, but they're kind of cool. My only guess for this is that this is like the first time at which he wonders if a master criminal is for some reason orchestrating everything. Sort of a shot in the dark.
Yeah, I don't actually remember if this is the first time, but he is thinking about like, oh, hang on a second. Enchantments are a thing where we can use magic to influence thinking and potentially behavior. That's a little bit worrisome, but also like, oh, there's magic for enhancing my intelligence, and I can be a even more master criminal and or detective. So yeah.
Nice.
Oh goodness. And that one ends on a reaction tag when Carissa tells him about the subject of the next chapter, chapter 18, mobility.
Mobility. Is this like? I mean, if he's having a reaction time and it's called mobility, then it might be about how he's, learning about the economics of this world, and he's learning that actually people can't really go places in this world very easily. That's a
Yeah,
big
and
problem.
notably, they can't escape shitty governments. And
Mm.
so, they were talking about like there are places where there's just, governmentally, societally imposed sexism and misogyny. And so there are just, people that are in these terrible conditions, and Keltham's like, well, why don't they just move to better conditions? And yeah, they can't do that in Galarian. Definitely not as easy. Although I think later we hear from one of the leaders that Cheliax, I think they said they like have open borders, at least as far as people coming in goes. I think we also learn at some point that they don't have open borders as much as people leaving goes. And
Yeah, that sounds about right.
that'll probably come in. I think, yeah, I don't know if we've gotten to that part, so I will just let that be for later. Okay, so chapter 19 is thinking quickly.
Thinking quickly. There are so many things that could apply to. Are they flirting? Is that what he's thinking quickly about?
Not really. So this relates to the chapter before before they talked about mobility. So this is he is now realizing that he can use these compulsion spells to figure out the things he was suspecting about the government, and so he casts
Oh,
Abadar's truth telling on one of the Heremites,
oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
he has to think very quickly in order to come up with convincing lies. And likewise, Elias Abarco has to think very quickly on how to uh, dispel this spell and not let Keltham figure it out. Uh,
Yeah. And move quickly too.
and move quickly, yes.
And in the other podcasts that we're following up, they said like, wow, this Elias sure seems like a cool guy. And I agree. At this point in the story, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
he kind of seems like a badass.
And, it does, when he does wind up solving the problem, which I think comes in later, but is not necessarily the focus of the story, he also thinks he's a cool guy
Yeah.
when he finally solves it. So next up is chapter 20, Going Meta.
Going meta. Well, I mean, Keltham at some point in the truth spell, I think asks a question like, "What question should I ask you?" That could be it.
Yes, and basically how far up does so then there's another thing he asks in addition to what should I ask you is also uh, how do I know you're still telling the truth, and specifically how can this truth spell be defeated, and how can I counter that defeat of the truth spell, and so on and so forth all the way up the chain.
Yeah.
And so he gets some answers to that, and then eventually Elias uh, manages to successfully hide that he's dispelled the truth-telling spell, and
Yeah.
Keltham is none the wiser.
It's a real, he's doing that thing you do in, I guess, ratfic isekai, we could call them, where you find some magic and then because you're a smart cookie, you immediately try to figure out the bounds of the magic and have fun with that. But they just trick him, which is very funny. They're like, all your information is bad.
Yep. All right, cool. And that is the end of of book 2, Customs, which
Yeah.
brings us to book 3, Orientation.
Okay. This one is the book where they go orienteering. Easy.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they break out their compasses and maps, and they try to figure out the boundaries of the forbiddance that they put up. No, that's not what they do. Orientation, basically just like we're figuring out where Cheliax is, where Keltham thinks he can bring Cheliax, what they need to do in order for that to happen. So that said, it starts out with chapter 21, Sense Motive.
Sense motive. I mean, does he use the spell sense motive in this chapter?
He does not use a spell sense motive. That's a saving throw. No, it's a skill. Saving throw in a different system, but Pathfinder is a skill that you can use in order to figure out intuitively what the other person wants.
People are always making fun of him for being bad at that and also being bad at bluffing, which
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense for various reasons.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But this one, sense motive, I actually I'm really happy about where this book break wound up landing, because we start with the introduction of Contessa Rillatha, who is a devil, and she's notably a very sexy devil. And she and Keltham write up a contract to figure out where things are going, and like in the previous chapter, in Keltham and Roth have to work out, like, okay, how can the other person foil this contract, and how could this contract go wrong, etc., etc. And to do that, they have to do a lot of feeling out what the other person's hidden motives are. So that's the sense motive. Then after that, once they've signed the contract, we get to chapter 22, 1 equals 1.
Well, before we get into that, I have 2 comments on the Contessa chapter. And one comment is that because my text-to-speech looks at her name and goes, well, that clearly is not a human name. It's probably the letter L appended to a human name. Or prepended to a human name. I'm probably just going to call her El Relatha, and that's just how I'm going to say it. And it's wrong.
Yeah, well, it especially doesn't help that in the text, were you listening? You okay? In it, if text to speech is pronouncing it badly, the authors didn't help much because they also cannot consistently spell her name the same.
Oh, really? I
Yes,
didn't realize
they
that.
they spell it differently almost every time they use it. There's
That's very funny.
LLIR Atha. There's LRIL Atha. I think there's an LIR Atha, and basically like the L's and R's just get jumbled all together in spelling. But the official spelling, I believe, is LRIL Atha. So
Well,
Ril,
I'm gonna.
Elril is
It's Luratha. Well, the important part is Luratha.
Lurla. Lurlafa. Someday that might start rolling off the tongue if she
Luratha.
becomes a more frequent character, but in the meanwhile,
I'll never tell.
we'll just let that one pass because after they sign the contract, she up and leaves. And then we
Yes.
get chapter
Oh,
22 1. Oh, number 2?
my
Sorry.
my other point was that his thing he says at the end where he's like, "Can you just assure me that there's nothing surprising in this contract?" And she says, "Yes, of course." And internally she's like, "That you have no sense of good sport, sir." That's
Yes.
very funny.
Exactly. And, that also reflects on the previous chapter about, like, okay, well, how can somebody foil this truth spell?
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so 1 = 1, did you say?
Yes.
Huh. Is it an interlude?
I should have made it an
Mm,
interlude, but I think you're on the right track in that
yeah,
what happens is they jump straight into a lecture, basically.
right. Yeah, and it's all about like basically necessity. And a great example of a necessary truth is that 1 = 1, and they explore all about what that means. What would it mean if 1 didn't equal 1? Possible worlds, blah blah blah. Good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And basically the answer is, well, it it can't. There just aren't any possible universes where 1 does not equal 1. So yeah, they're trying to feel out the literal, like, fundamental basics that are true in every possible universe so that they can start doing math. And
It's a good way to start.
yeah, and of course, this starts the lecture, but I still have not yet made that an interlude because chapter 23, Faster Than Hell, comes about. What?
Man, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, my only guess here is that in this chapter, for some reason, they feel like, oh, is this like a reference to how you can become perfect faster than hell by learning about logic and stuff?
Exactly. Yeah. So
And
I
that's
think
what, I mean, that's what our our second protagonist wants.
right. Yeah, and I think this might be the one of the first time. No, he's talked about it before, but like at some point, this does they do tell Keltham that, like, oh yeah, hell is the place where you get perfected, and so this Project Lawful, is basically like, okay, let's uh, do the hell thing. That's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it before you die, and so uh, it can be faster than what is
I think
currently in place.
it's pretty funny how you've named a chapter Faster Than Hell in what is arguably, from like a conventional plot standpoint, one of the slowest parts of the book.
It
Just
absolutely
because
is. Yeah.
they're talking about math.
But, on the grand scheme of things, and I think Carissa has mentioned this before, it does take like thousands of years in order for
Yeah.
somebody to become perfect in hell.
Yes.
I think
And it's
actually Luratha might have mentioned that if they talked about it at all, or maybe I'm thinking of another of our outside of this are the people who come in order to help direct this project
Right.
that's going on. So yeah, and notably, I have in this chapter, Keltham shows the proof of 2 equals 1, which
Yeah.
everybody loves, and Otolmens is like, holy fuck, what's going on? What's going on? And just, gets into overdrive. So
Yeah.
uh, that's fun. I love
Worries
Otolmens.
me too. Worries that even though this proof isn't valid, is he about to show a proof that is valid? Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. So now I finally decided to cut out the rest of the lecture into interlude 3 syllogism, which is I don't even think you need to guess there because it's basically just Keltham
Syllogisms.
teaching people what a syllogism is.
He's like Aristotle or whatever.
Yeah, and they start using notation, of course, because actually they might not. No, this might be before he gets the whiteboard. But yeah, he's talking about like the math stuff that needs to happen. Then we get to chapter 24, divergence.
Divergence. Okay. This is a young adult novel about how you get to be sorted into the houses of Hogwarts and nobody gets along. I'm pretty sure.
I have not read it, so I just lifted the title. I assume that it relates to this chapter.
Ooh.
Uh, but actually, do you want to take a real guess?
If they're done talking about like logic, then I don't really remember what comes right after that.
So unfortunately, they are not done. This
Oh,
is sort of a subverted subversion of your expectations because this is an interlude between the two parts of the lecture interlude.
ooh, you got
So
me.
stuff that is actually kind of probably plot relevant. And notably, it is Keltham musing about how Galarians and Dothalani may have had a common ancestor,
Oh
and
yeah.
uh, they diverged at some point, and so there are notable differences that make their societies different. And I was thinking about it. I don't know that I thought about it when I first read it, but now I realize that Keltham has so far only encountered humans, and Galarian is a big place with a lot of fantasy races.
I think I think
Oh,
there was
sorry.
like,
He met a halfling. That's
yeah,
true. It was a short person, though, I think, in
right.
his mind. So it wasn't noticeably non-human. So I
Yeah.
wonder what he's gonna think about the like common ancestry theory when he meets an orc or a
Yeah.
tiefling. Um, because he has an excuse for Contessa Luratha because she literally comes from a different world. She comes from the uh, the are they afterlives at this point? I guess they're afterlives.
Yeah.
And but actually, when he met her, I think he did comment on her wings and general good looks being just body modifications from default human uh, as a possibility. He commented on her difference, so there was that. But like that was still somebody not naturally on Galarian. Um, he did, I think, encounter some weird monster race when he first arrived. There were like insect-like creatures, but I don't know that he met them as like sentient participants in society, and those might have just been monsters. So
Weren't they like the ones in the world wound? Is that what you're thinking of?
yeah, near the world one. I thought there were some in the town too, but maybe
I don't really
we will
remember.
find out about that later. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, divergence. And then now that we've had our interlude into evolutionary theory, we get to interlude 4, building blocks. And this, I will save you the guess, is just where he teaches the notation and basic math so that they can actually get started. I will note that this chapter, the interlude, I put a content warning at it on it because it is approximately 1,600 words of just like Keltham talking about math, which is a lot of math. And that's on top of the previous interlude, which was 3,300 words. So you're welcome, anybody who is experiencing this for the first time through my edits, because I cut those out and put little summaries at the top of each of the chapters and said you can skip this.
I think, devil's advocate, I think everyone should read them. First of all, I think we both agree it's a good book. You should read it. And
that is
second
absolutely true.
of all, here are the two choices. Either you're a person who likes math, or you're a person who doesn't like math. If you're a person who likes math, you're going to go, hey, that's math. I like that. If you're a person who doesn't like math, you're going to go, what an interesting new angle on math I hadn't considered before. Maybe you'll like math at the end of it. Who knows?
That is an optimistic theory about how people who do not like math will approach this. But I
Yeah.
also put the summaries at the top for people who do like math and just don't want to read that much of it. That is a very basic subject. Anybody who does like math, I don't think they're going to learn anything new really from this lecture.
That's
Except
true.
that
Well,
Keltham uses slightly different notation because it's put into like plain text on this forum format. You know, there's not pretty print in this
they
on this
they
medium.
didn't whip out the latex extension to the forum code to let them write math papers in there.
Okay, and you mentioned.
I do think
Go
if
ahead.
people who do like math, I mean, if they haven't encountered like this a person with this particular philosophy of math or whatever, it could be pretty interesting for them, you know,
Oh,
because
definitely. I
if
was
you're,
very
yeah,
interested. I read the whole thing and took notes so that I could summarize it for people, but I did enjoy
nice,
it. I have to say.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but it's one of the reasons the previous hosts cut their podcast short was because there's just so many words in this.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
Well,
think
we're like the cafeteria Catholics of Project Lawful. So if you don't like some part of it, you can just skip that part.
yeah. I yeah. Apparently there are more lectures. I look forward to figuring out whether any of them are skippable. But in the meanwhile, moving on. We mentioned necessary truths before, like 1 equals 1. And now chapter 25 is our shadows of necessary truths. So what is?
Shadows, necessary truths. I'm gonna guess a contingent truth is the shadow of a necessary truth. That's again a shot in the dark because I guess they would be done discussing it by now. We're out of the interlude.
Yeah, I don't know if this is if he uses that term. There's so in this there's like a digression on clouds and what clouds imply about the nature of water or matter or something. But like basically there's something you can look at and they hint at the structure underneath. And so
Oh
basically
right.
Eltham's, saying, okay, there are different ways we can approach reality. Some of them are with this, hard logic that we've been working with, and some of them are by looking at things and making theories based on that. And ideally, we can, get as much from our observed evidence that we can make a hard logical theory. But it's it's important to have both of those tools.
Nice. I'm going to count that as a point for me. I think I was technically correct.
The best kind of correct. So,
Yeah.
chapter 26, we now have absolute and timeless stuff.
Mhm. On the other hand, I could say that the entire story is concerned with contingent truths, although they're actually falsehoods. Sorry, what was the chapter title?
Chapter 26, absolute and timeless stuff.
Absolute and timeless stuff. I mean, it just sounds like he's talking about necessary truths again.
Yeah. So in this one, notably, he's talking about how humans aren't really built for necessary truths, and
Mm,
like our biology and neuropsychology, whatever, has put in a bunch of heuristics in our thinking, and
mhm.
so what he's going to teach regarding lawfulness is going to do a lot of subversion of evolution and such.
Right,
So now
right.
we have chapter 27, keepers.
I guess he would explain the concept of keepers and how they're really good at this.
Yeah, I think that's it. Basically, Keltham just talks
All
about what
right.
keepers are. And then I cut off chapter 27.5 because there was a nice podcast episode break in there. But 27.5 is the fun kind of negotiation.
Mm, mm, mhm. Oh, okay, yeah. So this must be um, Asimodeus and somebody negotiating because he Asimodeus prefers the fun kind of negotiation where you have incomplete information because he's just crazy like that. And then at this point in the story, is this the point where Aurori is negotiating with him?
That is correct, yes. So
Nice.
Irori comes to Asmodeus, and Irori is not a lawful evil god, let's say, um, but I think is lawful, right? Um, in any case, Irori knows that Asmodeus likes the fun kind of negotiation where, they have hidden information, and
Mhm.
so he's writing in like the knowledge of Asmodeus liking hidden information negotiations into the uh, price he's willing to offer for the thing he wants. He's like, yeah,
Right.
Asmodeus, cause you're a dick, I'm going to not pay you as much in order to discourage you from being a dick.
Well, you gotta shade the bid. It's a very well-known uh, concept.
Uh, the
Am
what?
I talking nonsense? Oh, you have to shade your bid
Shade
because
did.
you sort of artificially deflate your bid in like an auction or something because usually the person who pays the most just has like an inflated sense of what it's worth, and that's why they're paying the most for it
Uh-huh.
in sort of like otherwise rational auction with incomplete information. So you just take a little off the top of that so that
Uh-huh.
you don't like win every bid and lose money.
That
It's
that is an interesting strategy that I believe normal people are not a fan of using because they want things.
uh,
But yeah,
yeah, it's
so you wanna tell me why this fun kind of negotiation is a particularly interesting chapter or
oh yeah.
particularly funny
I
chapter?
it's a really fun chapter because Rory like notices a mortal that's very basically conducive to his goals and says, Asimodeus, I want to make you a deal to not harm that mortal, etc., etc. And Asimodeus thinks, I'm gonna get this guy to pay me also to not harm Keltham, which he doesn't know. I've already agreed not to do. I'm making the fun kind of deals. And then Rory says, it's Carissa, actually. And
Yeah,
Asimodeus goes, darn it, I've been
yeah.
hoisted by my own petard.
Seriously, that one? Yeah, and this is because when Keltham was talking about keepers, Carissa was listening and thinking.
Yeah, and wanted
Um,
to become perfect. The way
yeah.
of Aurori.
So this now that the gods are protecting Carissa too,
Yeah.
brings us to the close of book 3, and we now have book
Hold on.
4. Oh, you have more?
Yeah, in retrospect, from the parts of the story we've both read so far, it's pretty funny that Asimodeus says, seriously, that one about Carissa. And then for the rest of the story, people are like calling her Asimodeus's chosen, and he must have great plans for you, child.
Yep. Well, I mean, so yeah, Irori, I think I don't know. Irori might not have been influencing this a lot. Yeah, she does sort of become Asmodeus's chosen one, and here she wasn't on his radar. Yeah.
Well, it's a comedy
Uh-oh, you are cutting out again.
of self.
Have you wandered into a dead zone?
Sorry, yeah, probably. I could put up a little jog, see if I can get out of here.
Yeah. So I've given Craig a note so we can cut out some of this like half conversation stuff.
It's unfortunate. It's perfect except for that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, I think we should press ahead.
Let's press ahead. All right. So this now closes book 3, and we move on to book 4, curriculum.
Pretty general. Probably just involves teaching stuff to the research harem, figuring out maybe what they're going to do in terms of Galarian.
Yeah.
That's
It's more of like figuring out where we are, but in a sense of like, all right, what needs to be done now with this Project Lawful to bring everybody up to speed? What are some strategies we can work toward now that we have all this common information? But it's going to have to wait for a moment because we start with chapter 28, lunch.
they have lunch.
So we then have chapter 29, variants.
Variants.
I really like these chapter titles, and you'll see why. So first we have variants.
Well, you gotta give me a hint. Are they still in the lunchroom?
They are still in the lunchroom, and this is a conversation between Carissa and Keltham.
Well, I don't know. My guess is that they might be discussing like the int scores of the population and so forth.
So I believe this is not quite that, though I probably should have saved the chapter title for when they did that, but I thought this was just too clever. So this is where they talk about the alignments and the grid of 9 and what the afterlives are and how like gods are categorically distinct from mortals, but they all, have some commonalities, and they're just different among these axes. They vary, and
Right.
there are, in addition to these 9, there are some others that are in medium zones. So that then brings us to chapter 30, variants.
Again?
Again, yeah. So chapter 29 is variance spelled with a C, and this is variance spelled with a T.
I see. Boy, I would have guessed the reverse of those two titles because the gods are all variants of a thing being a god, which means I guess maybe in this one they're discussing the int scores of the population.
Again, I was not that clever. But this one is actually where they start talking about kinks and
Yes.
how there is a variety of different kinks that are going to be different between Galarian and between Dathalon, and I'll show you mine if you show me yours, sort of thing. But yeah, so this one variants with a T because they are alternate versions of the same greater concept, the concept being sex and kinky things, and that it's, on this branch of reality, you've got these kinks, and on this other branch of reality, you've got these other kinks, and they're not really going to go into much detail yet, because we're still in the safe for work section of the story. But this is where I believe they agree to agree to settle the bet of whether Galarian or Dathalon is kinkier. But that'll come later because first
These. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
You could have called these chapters also deviants.
And deviants. Oh my god, that's beautiful.
Thanks.
Then it wouldn't, mistakenly imply that we're talking about distributions of statistics.
Well, I think it still would. Deviation.
Yeah,
You
but
could even call it like standard deviation.
oh my goodness, yeah, I'm.
Your titles were good too.
Yeah,
I'm just riffing.
This book is just it's got things. So now that they've been talking about sex and kinky things for a while, we come to chapter 31, dignity, and dignity.
Well, I kind of walked through some bad signal there, but you said dignity, and that's
A few
enough for me to
times,
go
yeah.
on. So he's walking up to the girls from class and having a conversation about them, and one of the parts of the conversation is about like whether they're struggling in class, and the concept of dignity, about not showing your suffering, is the Galarian concept of dignity, and then the Dathalani concept of dignity is like not getting mad at people for things they're allowed to do.
You are spot on right there. I like
Thank you.
even with the particular phrasing.
Yeah.
Are you actually reading the story while we're doing this?
That's why my signal is cutting out. I'm just downloading it page at a time.
Page at
all
a
at
time.
once.
Yeah. So yes, this is the various forms of dignity. One could also say the varieties or variants. But I
Yeah.
ran out of spellings, unfortunately. So
Uh,
so yeah, there's different types of dignity, and notably, Keltham is like, well, hang on a second, why wouldn't you ask questions of the teacher uh, about your completely stupid understanding of the concept they're trying to teach you? And on the other hand, they're like, why would you?
yeah.
Because they are used to like being set on fire or something if they are wrong about anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
As-
dignity.
aside from the being set on fire part, sometimes I've been in classes before, and sometimes it's like, oh, if only these students would ask questions and get their misunderstandings sorted out while they have this instructor who knows all these things. And sometimes it's like, could you guys maybe not ask, that will explain things?
Yeah, so there is some degree of assumption in Galarian that the teachers are their lectures are perfect because that's why they are because they are superior to their students. There cannot be anything wrong with what they're doing, and so if the student's not getting it, it's because they weren't paying attention. Uh, so yeah, but yeah, so he's building like the idea of how is he going to teach them, and then uh, he's still talking about the how because it's still lunchtime. He's having a lot of fun lunchtime conversations. But we're finally going to get back to the lesson with chapter 32, a balancing point of pressures.
Well, that is a description of an equilibrium. And so I guess this is the part of the lecture where he talks about how everything's in an equilibrium.
Yeah, and in particular, there is a specific equilibrium that comes up and is
There are
discussed
so
at
many to
length.
choose from.
Yeah. At this one, we're talking about male and female, and why are there equal
Right,
male and female
right.
among sexual species?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very complicated and at its heart very simple, but it kind of breaks your brain with how much they are able to pick it apart. So it this one's hard. But yeah, a balancing point of pressures. They're talking about equilibrium, and then in that, long sort of digression, we get to chapter 33, smallness and irrelevance.
Lost signal there. I just need the title of chapter 33 to guess about it.
To guess about 33, we have smallness and irrelevance.
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my shot in the dark would be that we're getting to when Broom gets clericked. That seems a little too far ahead.
I didn't write that in my notes. Let me find Broom. That is nope, that's later.
Right.
But you're sort of on the right track, but not. I'll just give it. This is where I think this might be just be a two post chapter where it's just Elias noting that all these girls are just hanging on Keltham's every word, and that's dumb, and they should feel bad, and they should all be very small, and we need to uh, uh, reinstill uh, that they are, pawns of this greater organization. And then in response, we have Ione says that she feels very small and she kind of wishes she knew more about the world, which is this lovely bit of foreshadowing. Um, and that brings us to chapter 34. Sorry, I need to say the title. Chapter 34, Two Step.
Two step.
I'll give you a hint. It's not dancing.
Okay. Well, I didn't remember any dancing. So, yeah, nothing comes to mind that would fit the description of a two-step.
So this is a little bit about the vocabulary difference between baseline and English and what is it, Taldane, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is now they're going to start talking about variance and deviation, and
Oh,
so he's basically trying to find the term for like what is a standard deviation, and uh, how do we measure the how much smarter he is from the average Galarianite, and what percent of Galarianites are intelligence above 12, and it turns
mhm.
out that it's approximately distributed with a standard deviation of 2, I think. So they say two-step is because you count 2 stat points in order to get your next uh, bonus point in skill rolls is
Right.
our game system, and the Galarian version of this standard deviation that they're gonna talk about. And how did they talk about variance and standard deviation? Of course, with chapter 35, games.
Games. Games. I feel like I'm jumping ahead, but are they like trying to basically do a breeding simulation game?
That is exactly right. So Keltham's like, you know what? We should learn this by playing games, and so we're going to do that. But specifically, we're going to have the students design the game. And when he says have the students design the game, he means he's going to design the game and make them think that they designed it themselves. And yes, it's about eugenics, which is lovely. This, of course, being the good kind of eugenics of helping the population thrive, uh, just by putting people together, bringing people together, the opposite of tearing them from their families. So yeah, they play that game, and then we get to chapter 36, Good Times.
Good times. Um, I mean, are they just continuing to explore the implications of the breeding game and what Keltham gene might do in there?
Yeah, so this is a little bit after, well, not after that. It is during that class. They start talking about, oh well, what can go wrong if we do this eugenics thing?
Mhm.
And the idea is that, oh shit, you can do stuff like breed accidentally uh, pesticide resistant pests because stuff. There's reasons in it, but then that leads to, say, famine and death and the world exploding. Because humans are trying to play God. And Otolmens is like, yeah, I remember that. Those were not good times when previously, of course, humans tried to play God and it didn't work so well. So yeah,
That was a very funny portion.
yeah,
The
and
Tolmens.
Otolmens, I love Otolmens every time. Every time she gets in here, it's just makes my heart soar, and I have many a laugh. But now that we've had those laughs, let's go to chapter 37, diversity and optimality.
Mm. This is very easy because you've just titled it the point he makes, which is that when you do your heritage optimization, as they call it, you're basically trading off your pool of diversity, which naturally accumulates via mutation and stuff, and you're trading that for basically optimization. But then, like you still need the diversity for various things, like if there's a pest, then maybe some of the crops will be resistant to it and the other crops won't. But if you've accidentally bred the crop that has 3% more grain, but isn't resistant to the pest, whoops.
Yeah, so this one actually gets in. So yes, you are correct. And the analogy he uses here is locks and keys and like codes uh,
Right.
and code breaking. That if you make the best password ever, then
Yeah.
as soon as anybody knows the password, then it becomes the worst password ever because somebody knows it, and that's just so. In order to make a good password, you need to have just some random characters in there or some kind of irregularity so that people can't just break in using the obvious things. And we've got our things we're trading off with, this diversity and optimality, and now we have interlude 5, which is just titled dash, like the character dash,
Like a hyphen.
like
Um,
a hyphen, longer hyphen.
I mean, did he get to the mic drop moment already about diversity and optimality,
This is
Keltham?
exactly the mic drop moment. So this is
Nice.
a
Yeah.
very short interlude. It is literally just the 3 reaction posts of Elias, Carissa, and Ione, and they're each realizing, oh shit, law and chaos are they're the same thing, but they're necessary at the So
Yeah.
brain exploding in all directions. And yeah, we just get that and then hop right back into chapter 38, the optimal best solution, which is sort of the wrap up. Um,
Okay. It's sort of the wrap up. That's my guess.
yeah. I don't really have anything else for that. It's mainly a continuation of chapter 37. It's just Keltham. Now that he's said chaos is law, or chaos and law are the important aspects of optimality, then he's just gonna put a
Yeah.
bow on it. And that concludes the day, I believe, or at least book 4, bringing us to book 5, obedience.
And I'm gonna guess there's a fair amount of swearing fealty to people and wondering whether you're a heretic.
Yeah, so this is a lot about the power structures in Galarian. So we start with chapter 39, Punitive Secrets.
Punitive secrets.
Punitive
I mean,
secrets.
that just kind of sounds like a description of heresy, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. So this is immediately after class. Ione approaches Keltham and is basically like, I want to be your slave. Please teach me the best things, and I will give you many a sexual favor. And then Carissa starts thinking some thought crimes in a different direction. But yeah, then that brings us to chapter 40, the letter.
Well, when I read that thing, I think at that point claims to be an oracle of Nethys or a Nethician or something.
Yeah,
And
I think did she realize she was Nethician before?
I think this kind of confused me when I was reading it because they don't have like a Nethys cutaway, as far as I can tell, going
Right.
poof. I think you just have to like go back and read that bit where she thinks about how she'd like to have knowledge,
Yep.
and then go. I guess she was clericked off screen.
Yeah, that was basically her asking to be clericked.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that little interaction when Keltham got clericked, and Abadar
Right.
was like, I want to cleric him so hard, but he hasn't asked for it yet. Oh, there
Yeah.
he goes. Technically he was asking for it, which technically correct, the best kind of correct. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, earlier we had Ione saying, I want knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, Nethys is like, okay, well that's technically a cry to be a cleric. And
I
so,
am knowledge.
yeah, I am knowledge. So yeah,
Yes.
and I forget what.
Wait. What?
Go ahead.
What makes that punitive secrets? Is it just heresy?
So yeah, it's heresy. Actually, I think you know, we missed it before, but there's a lot of clericing going on, and this is where a halfling slave in the halls, performing his endless task of cleaning up after the idiots and their endless messes, is now very suddenly a fourth level oracle of Otolmens. So Otolmens decides to get in on the fun and not cleric but oracle, which is different in ways, which I haven't discovered yet. But
It's
similarly bestowed by the gods.
yeah. I guess.
Oh,
I mean, from what it seems so far, it seems like they can kind of make people an oracle with less express permission than making them a cleric.
yeah, I think. Oh yeah, Ione is an oracle also, isn't she?
Right.
So she didn't explicitly ask. That's right. She did just say, "I want knowledge," um, and uh, I don't know if it's discussed now or earlier or later, but we do find that oracles have curses instead of this, elevation that clerics have. So we don't know what the halfling slave has for his curse yet, I think, but
Maybe you don't need to have one, or maybe even a Ptolemens is not the sort of god that gives you a curse with your oracle nature.
maybe. I think game mechanics wise, all oracles do have an oracle curse, but they can be things like Ione's thing, which is just like, oh, I have to be in a library, but I can get books whenever I want. So yeah. But yeah, and this sort of tells us why these are punitive secrets because, of course, the halfling slave is immediately arrested by security.
Right.
And meanwhile, Ione, Elias was listening in, and now he's gouging out her eyeball
Right.
because he can. They can heal it later. Ugh. So yeah. Then we've got chapter 40, the letter.
A letter. Does someone receive a letter? Huh. Well, I guess that's my guess, even though I don't remember what letter would be important.
Yeah, so we actually do get a delivery of a message through Phistophilis, who is a devil, I believe, and he's delivering Asmodeus's message about like what Carissa and Elias are to do in order to uh, fulfill the letter of the law uh, regarding this contract that Asmodeus has signed with Aurori.
Right.
And there's stuff about how the chain of command can corrupt uh, instructions. And so
Right.
Phistophilis is, I believe, many steps down the chain. So we don't actually know exactly what Asmodeus's will is, but we do get very precise instructions to Carissa and to Elias. And meanwhile, Ione is also trying to figure out what her god's instructions are doing, are telling her to do. So then we've got interlude 6, which is 10 minutes, or the first 10 minutes, rather.
Well, I assume it takes place over a 10-minute span, but other than that, I got nothing.
Yeah, so this is next up on Keltham's agenda is to learn wizard magic. And so since we've had a lot of there's been a lot in chapter 40 of just Carissa thinking for several paragraphs and pages probably. And so here Eleazar hops in and is like, all right, I want to do something too. And so he has Keltham just explore wizard magic for 10 minutes, and predictably, Keltham does not get it. And then we get brought back to Carissa in chapter 41, The Spirit.
Spirit. Is this when she gets visited at night?
No, actually, that's very far down the way. So let's speak no more of that for now.
Oh, we'll speak no more of that. No.
But oh wait, maybe you're right. I'm just thinking of a different person visiting her. Is this during the night? She gets visited.
Oh, this is named the Spirit to contrast with the letter,
Yes, it is.
and it's about following the spirit of the law,
Yes.
which would mean this is when Aspexia Rugaton visits and
Exactly.
explains her whole philosophy of simply follow instructions.
Yeah. That it's very difficult to go wrong if you just follow the instructions. You don't have to philosophically imagine, what is behind this ineffable God's uh, uh, desires that he handed down these instructions. How can we fulfill his true will? No, just do exactly what he said. That's it. And Aspexia is like, God damn it, why am I the only one who ever does this? But she has a pleasant chat with Carissa. And then I broke off the end of this chapter for podcast break again to chapter 41.5, Reassurance.
Reassurance. Well, I guess they're just like, well, if you want to tell us anything, okay, but we don't order you to tell us anything, nor do we order you to go seek help unless you would seek help anyway.
I'm not sure.
I'm just giving a vague answer.
Standard protocols, she says. So maybe I should have broke this earlier because I think that is the end of the previous section of the chapter, I guess. But yeah, this section is now we are no longer in the conversation with Carissa, but Aspexia flies off to figure out what the hell to do with halfling slave number 958245.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, she says, yeah, we're not going to summarily execute you because if a Tolman's put you here, that's a statement about how dangerous he thinks these things are. In fact, we very much defer to to Otolmens because we don't want the world to end. So
Yeah.
here, have a dagger and a greater invisibility ring, which is the most magic Broom has ever seen in his life, or ever held. Yeah, and we will see more of Broom later. But first, we get chapter 42, deterministic and fully visible.
I don't have a good guess for that unless it's about the nature of gods.
Not quite. This is about the nature of magic, actually. And he's noticing that magic is inconsistent for him.
Mm.
And I don't remember if we get a satisfying conclusion, answer to that. I suspect, or at least I did at the time, that it has something to do with him being a cleric and everybody else in the harem being wizards, and divine magic
Mm.
and arcane magic work differently. So the spells he's been casting, I don't know. But yeah, so they are not deterministic and fully visible. He does not know exactly what's going on, but he hopes to with chapter 43, Eagle's Splendor.
Does he get Eagle's splendor cast on him?
He does, in fact. Actually, I believe he casts it on himself. He thought
Right.
it was going to be Owl's Wisdom, but
Yeah.
turns out it's Eagle's Splendor, which affects charisma.
Right. Right.
And I think you mentioned something before that is relevant here, but I'll let you have a stab at what goes on here if you want.
Well, they do like acting exercises for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is some role playing, basically, within the role playing. It's
Yeah.
turtles all the way down.
It's
And
pretty funny stuff.
when Eagle Splendor wears off, he establishes a cartel for keeping the prices of rat extermination high, which is a lovely little tidbit. Then we finally do get Owl's Wisdom, which somebody else has, I believe. I don't remember whether somebody else has it, but yeah, chapter 44, Owl's Wisdom, which I think also somewhat self-explanatory, but if you want to take a stab at details.
I think he does some stuff and then he runs off to have a think. Possibly the thing he does is like practicing spells.
Oh my god, you are so on point. I am like just the level of detail with which you can remember these. Yes, there is a small digression for him to learn how to cast spells with Owl's Wisdom before he runs off and ends up paying chapter 45 a non-trivial price.
Yeah, because he's having an identity crisis basically, which involves a lot of backstory for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
I thought when I was reading this, I thought, this is pretty fun. We're getting the like magically catalyzed identity crisis of the protagonist really quickly, but percentage wise into this story. It might be a whole new story after this. Yes, actually, he gets better
Mm-hmm.
or worse.
It's kind of interesting because it's not really clear exactly what he realizes about himself in this identity crisis, but like the theme of the chapter is that so we've I think this might be where we first get the phrase "that which can be destroyed by the truth" should be, and so while he is high on Owl's Wisdom, he makes some realizations, and uh, ostensibly that doesn't go away when Owl's Wisdom goes away. It's just the mental processes that would lead you there. But if you realize something, you still remember it, and so he has paid this non-trivial price of being smart that now he can see some terrible things and they can't be unseen. But I believe he also might have realized that they're manipulating him. But again, not really detailedly. I think he just ends up being more suspicious is all.
Yeah. I think he basically realizes that back home he would have been a failure by his own metrics,
Mm-hmm.
and that there are too many things that aren't adding up around here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then we've got I love this chapter, chapter 46, leverage.
Leverage. I don't know. A lot of characters are trying to get leverage over each other in this whole book. Yeah. Why don't you just tell me what this one is?
So yeah, this is a wonderful exercise of leverage because this is Ione, now empowered by a god who is not Asmodeus, realizing, oh shit, I have power here because what I did before, where I offered to be Keltham's slave, now he knows me very well, not entirely intimately, but notably he would notice if I went missing. So they were very interested in, murdering her for being a oracle of another god, but she has leverage, and so there's a lovely interaction between her and Elias, and she ends up winning the negotiation, and with her victory comes the spoils. Do you recall what the
I don't
spoils are?
know what she wins in particular besides their uneasy peace resuming.
Not quite, but yes, ultimately in the end. But first, she gets burned alive.
Oh, yes, I see.
So they're like,
You
yeah,
were being ironic.
we can't kill you, but we can still burn you alive and then heal you later.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, she is well set, relatively speaking, among everybody in this story. I think it's her and Broom that like they don't need to worry about anything. Although she needs to worry
Mhm.
about being in a library. But other than that, like for themselves, actually, I guess Broom needs to worry about the world being destroyed. So there's that. But they can do what they want is the important thing. Lovely, and that concludes book 5, our obedience, right? Yeah, book 5 obedience is now over, and we come to book 6 consent. By contrast,
Yeah, well, I assume they're gonna have maybe some intimate times in this book or discussions thereof.
yeah. So this is not quite our not safe for work section, but this is where they do a lot of talking about what the hell consent is, because it turns out Keltham has. I wouldn't say he has a different idea of what consent is, but he has any idea what consent is. And in Galarian, particularly in Cheliax, that's just like I don't know if they even have a word for it because it's just so foreign. Um,
Well, they must have a concept of it because they enjoy violating it for evil.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so first we have chapter 47, What Can Be Destroyed by the Truth, which is sort of a callback and may give you a hint.
Is Keltham just recovering from his incident?
Yeah, so not just Keltham, but also Carissa, who didn't have, a crisis of identity, but she had a crisis of, holy fuck, my life is getting turned upside down. I just talked to the high priest as of Asmodeus, and now I got a ton of responsibility here. And yeah, so Keltham and Carissa are working through their respective crises. And then we've got chapter 48, and this runs off the screen. Let me see if I can find it. Chapter 48 is a temporal process with two sides where each side is composed of people who each have their own incentives, such that each side is in equilibrium with respect to the incentives given to them by the other side.
They're just like discussing society again.
Yeah. And there's a particular part of society they're discussing.
Government?
No. I
Trade?
mean, sort of government, if you can consider the government of, I've forgotten what the other country is, but they're talking about
Aldor?
sex work.
Oh.
sex work is, and this is basically like a treatise by our authors on like, look, sex work is work. Stop stigmatizing it. It's just like two people having, a contract where each gets something they want, and they do things that they are okay with doing. So this is like getting into our idea of consent. Is like, this is a
Right.
consensual transaction. And the title of this chapter was just like, that phrase is just too great. It's one of
Yeah.
the like, this is 2 syllables in baseline, but in order to say it in Taldane, it's however freaking many words that is. And do you have any guesses about what the baseline word is? Because I don't think he actually tells us.
I don't know. Do you have the context handy? Like the surrounding sentence?
Well, I mean, sex work is one of the things. Let me see if I can find the sentence. Um, uh, oh my, that's following Carissa talking about slavery. But she's not going to say that.
Control F.
Keltham asks, like, what is it that prevents the people who like sex from being the sex workers? And Carissa's like, well, there's diseases and the risk of a dangerous guy, and you know, basically it's a job you wouldn't do unless you had no other options. And Keltham says, oh, in Dathalan, it's that sufficiently attractive people who are sufficiently good at sex have formed a temporal process with two sides where each side is composed of people who each have their own incentives such that each side is in equilibrium with respect to the incentives given to them by the other side. And on the other side, from the very desirable people, are people who are sufficiently cool and have done sufficiently awesome things. Does that give you any hint as to what the hell Keltham was trying to say there?
Man, you know, that is probably an extremely accurate description of what it is. And then do we have a word like that in English? I don't know, societal structure, something along those lines.
Yeah, my best guess is implicit contract or implicit agreement. It's
Mhm.
basically this idea that, like, in our society, if you're sexy, you can be a sex worker, and if you're successful, then you can be rewarded. Uh, so
I mean, the cheating answer is just like an equilibrium,
yeah,
but it's a
but
specific type of equilibrium.
you can't use the word in the definition, and we've got the word there.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, and now we have chapter 49. Oops, it's time to overthrow the government.
Yeah. Well, presumably they're continuing their theme of talking about society, and they're discussing about how all of the governments kind of sound bad. And Keltham says, "Why do the people not simply overthrow the government like we've always practiced in my Oops, it's time to overthrow the government festivals?"
Which is apparently an actual thing in Dathalan, uh,
Right.
or civilization, I guess, is what you'd call their government, society,
You gotta
whatever.
stay frosty, you know?
Yeah, you just, every few years, you just disrupt the societal order and overthrow the government.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you pretend to.
no, I think they do, like, actually do it,
Hmm.
don't they?
That's definitely not the impression I got. I thought of it as sort of a drill, but I don't know. Maybe he just throws it out here as like a detail, and then that's not elaborated on until later.
Yeah, I think that might. I think it's just a throwaway thing.
Okay, yeah,
It's Dathalan's annual "Oops, it's time to overthrow the government" festival. So
yeah,
it is a holiday, but, like, what we call that
yeah,
in America here is election year.
yeah. When I read that, I thought, is that just how they describe like voting? Like we're gonna elect a new government, we're gonna overthrow them peacefully.
Except the whole government. So it could just not be democracy anymore. Which I don't
That's
even
true.
recall if Dathalon or civilization is explicitly democratic in
Hmm.
any recognizable sense.
Well, it's probably there are democratic elements arranged in a way that isn't just straight up voting for most of the time, but I imagine there are some straight up votes that you have in there.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, uh there are there's literature to learn about this in Eliezer's April Fool's post, so maybe it's there. But meanwhile, yeah, they're talking about how Osirian sucks, as does Nidal, and probably everywhere else. At the end of that, they're like, want to go back to talking sex work in Dathalon? Because, terrible government is a depressing thought.
Yeah.
And now we've got chapter 51, Constellation. Oh, wait, sorry. No, chapter 50, spoilers.
Spoilers. Well, here I assume from their train of conversation, they're talking about the sorts of exciting activities you might get up to as an older Dathalani, and they don't want to spoil the discovery, so they don't tell you about it, and they print everything in a code in the newspapers, so that if you're in the know, you can read about what's going on. Go ho ho!
Yeah.
But if you're not in the know, you're like, I'll figure that out someday.
Which is like, it's an interesting thing because as we've previously learned regarding Dathalon sex work paradigms, implicit contract and such, their idea of how socially what sex is or what sex means is basically it's just a contract and whatever, and we've got this more or less utopian society such that they can just sort of do sex whenever they want. They don't have to worry about like all the various nanny laws that we've got, that restrict what you can do in the privacy of your bedroom, that many Earth and probably Galarian countries have, and notably children. Apparently, their method for handling underage sex is they just don't tell you the fun stuff until you figure it out for yourself.
I didn't really get the impression that it was for underage sex so much as just like, oh, you're new, you're above the age of consent, but you're experimenting. Go have fun with other teenagers.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't remember exactly all the stuff they're talking about, but
Sure.
I got the impression it was more an idea that like their structure around regulating things in general that are pleasurable the most the first time is they just like have actual rules in society for just keeping people in the dark. They don't like prevent you from doing or encountering or having any of those things. It's just they don't tell you they exist. Kind of like Keltham's sadism, which we learned about, I think, at lunch, is that Keltham is a sadist. Right. So they're talking about kinky sex. Actually, yeah, I think this is where they talk about the sadomasochism and like why they don't have it on Dathalon is they probably don't have enough masochists in order to support the number of sadists there probably are.
Yeah, that's his hypothesis anyway.
That's his hypothesis, but it was a thing that he wasn't even on his radar.
Right.
So who knows?
Yeah.
It could have been one of those things that was hidden from him because he didn't have the correct code. He hadn't experienced it yet. So maybe it is all over Dathalon. It's just printed in code.
Yeah, that's one possibility. I think what you're supposed to get out of this, and this is me kind of thinking from like a narrative perspective, not really like a in-universe reason perspective. I think what you're supposed to conclude is that Dathalon just has like the regular ratios of interest in this, but they do suppress it, and then Keltham is using his galaxy brain to reason about it, and he just comes to this false conclusion. That's very funny if you think it is the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just, terribly naive because he is a teenager, right? I don't remember how
Yeah,
old exactly.
I think he's like 18.
He's probably 18 because they wanted to have sex scenes and not get, uh, dragged. Anyhow, so speaking of things the authors like, we get chapter 51, Constellation.
Constellation. Do they look at the stars?
That is exactly what they do, but
Oh
it
yeah.
has a second meaning.
Is the second meaning like glowfic somehow?
Basically, it is. So looking at the stars, they're wondering, like, what different, variants are there out in the universe, like on different planets, at different stars, etc. Maybe I could be meeting somebody else, and you know, these relationships could be different. Blah blah blah. And it's kind of in my opinion, very heavy-handed reference to how Glowfic works, which is basically you pull characters from different universes and throw them together and see what shakes out.
I didn't even catch that. That's a good catch.
But yeah, and for listeners who are not familiar, Constellation is what Glowfic writers call their community, is the constellation, which this is why it's a lot of stars and a lot of different things that can happen with the characters in our minds.
Kitty? I found a kitty cat.
You
I'm
found a
petting the
kitty
kitty cat.
cat. Oh my god, that's wonderful.
Nice.
I
You can go on.
locked my kitty out of this room. So no kitty for me. Chapter 52, Expectations.
Boy, I guess they're navigating their expectations about their relationship.
Unsurprisingly, yeah. And there's an interesting thing that happens in this chapter, which is Keltham discovers that on Galarian, people have sex on their beds where they sleep? Question mark?
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's only because they're poor.
They're too poor to have cuddle rooms.
Yeah.
And Carissa, likewise learns that cuddle rooms are the Dathalani way. And they talk about consent some more. Lovely.
Right.
And then we've got chapter 53, To Delight in Tyranny.
Oh, well, I imagine a character is going to be delighting in tyranny in this chapter. Let's see. That could mean one of two things. Possibly this is where our second protagonist runs off to go get some counseling about the nature of tyranny and whatnot.
And the other thing?
Some people delight in some tyranny sometimes. You know how it is.
Okay. Well, you were right the first time, yes. Carissa is like, oh shit, Keltham expects consent. I don't know how to proceed. Keltham, I don't know how to proceed. I'm going to go talk to a priest about this thing. And Keltham's like, oh, yeah. I mean, if I didn't know how to proceed, I'd go talk to a keeper. So this is probably the same sort of deal. He lets her go. And she goes and talks to the head priest here.
The site director.
Yeah, the site director. And yeah, basically he teaches her about the secret meanings of Asmodean philosophy, his domains, which are tyranny, which is not just rulership, slavery, which is not just obedience, compacts, which are not just deals, and pride, which is not just having a high opinion of yourself. And then Carissa tries to sort out which of those she's most interested in. And I don't remember what her decision was. Do you?
There were sort of a couple options being floated. Like specifically, I remember Maylal, I think, thinking in his head somewhere along these lines, like it's obviously slavery. you're obviously a perfect slave. Do that one.
Do that
But
one. Yes.
but Carissa thinks it might be pride, and she's like trying to cultivate all of them.
Yeah.
The more the better.
Because she just wants to be she wants to be perfect for her god. That's what she
That's
wants to
true.
do. It is so fascinating seeing like somebody so smart be just having smart justifications for this horribly dumb thing, which is just submitting
Yeah.
to a evil deity whose evil is for the sake of evil. Like she even knows that the evil is for the sake of evil enough that she's trying to hide it from Keltham, and yet she wants it even for herself. But we see her reason like with actual reasoning, and it's hard to even it's hard to counter her in many places.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Carissa. I think she's a great
Mhm.
character. So yeah,
She
she
is.
chats with Farrah Mylol, Mail,
I mean, I say Maylol, but that's just because
Maylol. Yeah, there we go.
that's what my voice
That's a good
said to
one.
me.
All right, so now we've got chapter 54, responsibility.
Oh yes. So at this point in their digression, Maylol says, "Well, you've given me an explanation there, which I can't understand. But that's not bad because you're being insane. It's bad because it means you're the expert now. So let's go over and talk to Elias and see if we can figure out what's to be done." And Elias says, "Yep, Keltham's crazy." And Maylol says, "Okay, well, Carissa, you get all the responsibility now because you're the only person who understands this guy.
Yep,
We just think he's crazy."
yep, yep, definitely. And I can't remember if this is where she manages to get authorized for headbands. Is that where our podcast namesake comes in?
Everybody wants headbands, and you can see why.
Yeah, she is so obsessed with headbands, and so she wants to get it. And meanwhile, in lieu of headbands, she goes and gets chapter 55, Fox's Cunning.
Gets Fox's cunning cast on herself, and then reasons about some stuff. Her situation, the mysteries.
Yeah, I don't recall if it's the mysteries, but what she is definitely most urgently reasoning about is how the hell she's going to approach Keltham, and how is she going to have a satisfactory romantic encounter with him with this huge cultural gap. Um,
Mhm.
and she works some things out apparently, and we wind up, along with some of the things she's worked out at chapter 56, social deception.
Well, that's a running theme, especially in
Mm-hmm.
the Cheliacs. Everybody, Keltham is like, how come people in Cheliacs pretend to be cheerful when they're not? Surely, I mean, what's the point? Everyone would know that you weren't cheerful. It's crazy.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
so I don't know. I guess it's along those lines.
Yeah. It's mostly just they're talking about sex games, or rather, head head games. In romance, they've got straightforward romance and complicated romance. We also
Yeah.
learn that on Dathalon there are sexy alien rehearsal festivals that are city scale, and we get uh, no details about that, which is very disappointing. I hope there is an extended universe uh, story of a sexy alien rehearsal. Yeah, basically the idea of like role play. And yeah, all of this chat is just sort of the lead up to book 7. Kissing is not a human universal. And this is finally, of course, our uh, quote unquote not safe for work section, though it's actually pretty tame. And also, there's no graphic images. So the like literal forework part of that is
Think of the face casts they could have used
think of the face
in a
casts
different
they
world.
could have used. Yeah, oh my god. Yeah, that they decided not to. I think I don't know, that might only be because these actors actually aren't porn actors and they don't have appropriate face casts for them. Like they've got a pretty sexy face cast for Carissa being seductive, but of course, nothing of them naked, I think, let alone oh my god. I'm just scrolling through these and I ran into the one with Keltham and his shirt unbuttoned, or rather unzipped, which is very sexy in my opinion. Apparently, other people did not find it sexy, but
Well, I didn't even see them, so
oh
sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's
I'm making a collage in my head. I may have seen it, or I can't even remember because I've seen some of them just incidentally. So I'm just imagining that, but with
it,
less shirt.
it is very smoldery.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So I did chapter this out. But if you want to just summarize, that's fine.
Let's see. Well, I mean, they do have some intimate times interspersed with a bunch of discussion and lore, and notably the revelation that kissing is not a human universal.
What?
Yes,
Yeah.
on real Earth, real fact.
Real fact, it is the first line of this new thread is a link to a article entitled "Kissing is not a human universal." So if you're interested, you can go learn more. Yeah, so we can quickly go through these chapters. Chapter 57, the standard lattice.
The standard escalation lattice of romance, where
Yes.
at the top you're married forever, and
Yep.
at the bottom you just exist in the same society, and
Yes.
hand holding is somewhere in there.
Yeah, for 0, you have assumed prior knowledge that you are commonly known you have commonly known mutual possession of the human heritage and of default frameworks laid down by civilization.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I
lovely.
guess actually, like they're below 0, and we in
They
our
are
world are
below,
below
you're
0.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
They do not even know that like kissing is not a thing on Dathalon and
Yeah.
respectively kissing is a thing on Galarian.
Yeah.
Or actually, maybe it was that kissing is just super high up the lattice.
No, he didn't know what kissing was. He was like, I guess this is a thing we could do. This is
Mhm.
fairly intimate. Ah, I see. It's a stable point because you can just mirror the other person. Ingenious.
Mhm. Yeah. Then we've got chapter 58, pre-flight checklist,
Nice.
which this I believe is where we get to know Keltham's shirt, which Carissa would love to steal, but which Keltham is definitely not uh, giving away.
Everybody loves that shirt.
Yep. And I mentioned that because now it is no longer they are naked. And we get to chapter 59, overthinking things.
This is the one where they overthink things.
Really? Yes. They very much overthink things, which yeah. Particularly Carissa is, trying to express consent in a way that like doesn't give away that she really wants Keltham to just have his way with her, because that would be dangerous or something, or it would turn him off rather, which she does not want to do. Then we
It
get.
would make him suspect that they were grooming him for evil.
Actually, oh shoot, I have notes on this. Let me. I just realized that yeah, just a moment. I think I have notes for this. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. Anyhow, chapter 60, stakes.
This is where they eat steaks, a delicious meal.
All right, moving on.
Hmm.
No, they set out some conditions for a particular sex game they are going to have, and I believe Carissa wants his shirt is what she wants, and he says no, as we have established.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what their stakes are. I think it's probably too sexy to repeat. What do you
I
think?
remember they have a big conversation about whether it makes any sense to have such stakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my god. There's just so freaking much talking and thinking, and this is the weirdest sex scene
They
anybody has ever
achieved
written, I think.
will they or won't they in the very scene when they are.
Yep, yep. Um so yeah, that brings us to interlude. Lovely. Number 7, the crucifixion conditional.
Wow. I mean, since it's an interlude, I assume Dathalon is telling us about some stuff.
You
But
are
I don't
correct.
know. I don't know why there's a crucifixion or even a conditional in here. Dang. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh god, do I even know the context? Crucifix. Why am I spelling that with a V? Crucifixion conditional. Uh, it's something to do. Well, it's about crucifixion. Was a punishment for a purpose. Pay your taxes, or we'll nail you to a cross.
Oh yeah.
Is something uh, in Galarian, basically. To a Galarian mortal resisting government on emotional grounds, quote, don't kill people or we'll send you to the continent of exile, and, quote, pay your taxes or we'll nail you to a cross, sound like threats just the same. Maybe one better intentioned than the other, but they both sound like threats. It's only a Dathalani, or perhaps a summoned outsider forbidden to convey their alien knowledge to mortals, who will notice the part where civilization's incentive for following the exile conditional doesn't depend on whether you respond to exile conditionals by refraining from murder. So yeah. Mm, yeah, so this is Dathalon slash Keltham talking about like ideal punishments are those that like don't have to be given, uh, and whose purpose is not uh, vindictive. It's that they're just uh, utilitarian. They are like, oh, this is a bad person. Either they stop being a bad person, or they just go away, so they can't be a bad person to everybody, or to anybody else.
Well, this is the part that makes sense if you understand decision theory.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And I am not conveying decision theory very well right now because it is 10 o'clock, which is
Yeah.
currently late for me for whatever reason. Um,
Oh,
uh, but
we'll
we've only got 4
get through it.
chapters left.
That's true. I will say I'm frantically trying to remember the phrase that they use. It's something like it's elucidating the distinction between a threat and I'm blanking on the second thing. And the idea of the threat is like, I'm purely making this threat so that you will deviate from your course of action, so that I will deviate from my course of action purely to punish you. If you didn't do what I wanted. Whereas the other thing, which I'm still frankly blanking on, I guess it's like a
I think it's
rule
just called
punishment.
threat. It's just there are different definitions.
Mm, mm.
Well, the same definition but better interpreted.
Right. And then the
And they invoke Pharasma at some point, because Pharasma is Pharasma versus Rovagog in the World Wound and such. She
right.
needs to make sure all the gods stay in a alignment, so to speak.
Yeah. But the good kind of threat is like I'm just following my uh basically incentives and internal logic, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to like destroy my own internal logic purely to force you to destroy your internal logic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sort of bite-sized capsule for it.
Yeah, this is a very dense chapter, and of course it relates to sex games. And I love this. The elephant. I now have additional questions. Thanks, Matt.
Technically, that elephant is naked. So there you go.
You are possibly correct. We actually don't have proof of that because we only see his face. But
That's true. I've seen the webcomic it comes from, and
yeah.
I can confirm the elephant is not wearing clothing.
But yeah, I love in that reaction we've got, and since this improvised cuddle room doesn't even have a whiteboard, there's absolutely no hope that Keltham is going to be able to explain any of his bewilderment, even if he tries. He has zero viable options except to ignore this and for now and move on, which
Nice.
we're going to do now. Chapter
Right.
61, Voluntary Servitude.
Well, that's kind of the whole theme of the whole thing.
Yep, voluntary servitude. And and then they talk about it and then decide to move on again. We get to chapter 62, Good Lies Are Personal.
Good lies are personal. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that relates to specifically.
Yeah. I don't recall exactly. I know that one is that Carissa needs to continue lying to Keltham, of course.
Right.
And in order to invoke that lie, she needs to, or in order to bolster that lie, she needs to invoke parts of herself, and so that they are true from her, even if they are a lie to him. And then we've got
also they lie with each other in the
also
other sense.
they lie with each other in the other sense. You are correct. And we get to chapter 63, when you will survive anything.
Oh, I don't know what that means.
Okay. This is yeah. Because Carissa knows that an afterlife exists. And so even if she dies, she's going to live.
Right.
And so, things are different in her philosophy than in his.
Right.
Because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I almost don't want to say the title of the last chapter.
You gotta.
But I gotta. It's chapter 64, Head in the Game.
Well, that's
Which,
yeah.
yeah. If I had just like combined a couple chapters and then left the interludes as numbered with the chapters, this would be chapter 69. But I missed it. Because you know why? My head was not in the game.
You got distracted by all of the talking, you know?
All of the talking, I forgot how to count.
Yeah.
So this notably not 69, but so it goes.
So it goes.
And so now we have book 8, and I actually have the chapter titles for book 8 already. Do you think we should tease our listeners with them without any speculation?
I think you should. You should, yes. And if they don't want to be so teased, then that'll just be the last thing that we say.
All right, you heard it. Spoilers from here out, in the form of 3-word summaries or just identifiers for these chapters. Book 8 is Revelations, and we've got in that book chapter 65, Thoughts and Prayers, chapter 66, A/S/L, chapter 67, Errors in Favor, chapter 68, Planning Ahead, chapter 69, Revealed Preferences, chapter 70, Oops, chapter 71, Glimpses of Visions, and chapter 72, The Greater of Two Evils. So you got that to look forward to. I guess we'll be back with our, I don't know if we can go more long form than we have so far.
Yeah.
We've been digressing a lot. Yeah, so we'll see what we can make of it next episode, whenever that happens.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you for
right.
playing. I think I believe of the contestants in this game, you have come out ahead. You are the winner, and you will move on to the, I guess, not even finals round 2, let's say.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Yeah,
I also got the world record speed run for this game.
that is correct. You have world record speedrun. Yeah.
All right. I will now end the recording, and we will be back next time with book 8.
All right. See ya.